So you know when you consume any kind of media and you're like, whoa, this looks pretty cool. I'm glad I found this. And then you step away from it to check out other stuff, thinking that you'll remember to come back to it later, and then you don't until it's already too late, and now you can't seem to remember what that thing you thought was cool was even called. So basically forgetfulness. Happens to all of us. Myself especially. I never seem to keep decent notes on stories or media I discovered. So by the time I uncover some distant memory about it, I almost always have no clue what the title is. This would ultimately be my experience with the webcomic Parallax, created by Falke. I remember reading the first chapter and the first few pages of the second back in 2015. The story and art was pretty striking, and I found myself very captivated. That is until I decided to completely forget about it. Well, maybe not completely forget. I still vaguely remembered the story and what happened, but I, for the life of me, could not figure out the name of this webcomic. It honestly irked me these past few years, making me feel like I was missing out on greatness or whatnot. I tried a few times to look for it, even at one point sifting through the many webcomic entries on TV tropes, but I was unsuccessful each time. Fast forward to a few days ago, I was doing some research for another webcomic I planned to cover when I came across the obscure webcomic tournament page on Tumblr. I saw that similar questions were asked about webcomics they remember but don't know the name for, and I was like, maybe I should give this a try? So I paused my research, drafted my best summary, and submitted my question. The following morning, I saw that my question was posted, and lo and behold, the first reblog with tags mentioned a comic called Parallax. I searched it up, visited its site, and just like that, I finally found it. It wasn't 100% how I remembered it, but it got so many specific details right that I chalked up any inconsistencies to my mind just mashing certain unrelated details together in an effort to re-remember the comic's story. Or something. Anyways, I found it, and it's all thanks to Squawk's Aesthetics on Tumblr. You are a real one. Basking in this newfound win, I decided to put my research aside for that other webcomic I was looking into and read through all of Parallax, which didn't really take me that long actually. I found myself finishing it within one sitting. 2 days later, and here I am writing this script, fully shifting gears and making this my next planned video. So sorry, mystery webcomic. You'll get your time in the sun, I promise. That, and I don't anticipate this script being especially long. It'll more so just be about my general thoughts on the comic than some extensive recap. So yeah, spoilers from here on out. If you want to check it out first, I've added the link to the webcomic in the description below. Otherwise, time to talk about Parallax. Parallax follows Lomax Torchstone, a pretty shy and socially anxious 17-year-old that moved into the town of Silverdalen not too long ago. Now, Lomax is someone who isn't all too excited with the current direction his life is going. While seemingly decent people, his parents seem to put pressure on the boy, encouraging him to pursue a future in science despite Lomax himself not being much of a fan. What's even more worrying is this dream he keeps on having, where he slowly drowns inside a glass bottle while his parents observe and later leave him to go to work. While horrifying at face value, I think the symbolism behind this dream is pretty clear, with Lomax feeling trapped and unfulfilled, yet lacking the self-esteem and confidence to break out of his shell. So, when science teacher Dan Rogers picks up on Lomax's lack of personal resolve while visiting his office, he decides to give the boy a peculiar box, mentioning that it'll change his life. Though clearly weirded out, Lomax accepts the gift before heading home. Eventually, he opens it, discovers the square glass inside it, and next thing you know, magical boy transformation. And can we just pause for a second to marvel at the art? This comic is absolutely beautiful, and probably one of the main reasons it always stuck with me despite forgetting the name. It has this really bright and fun color scheme, a real feast for the eyes. But yeah, anyways, Lomax understandably freaks out and later barricades himself in the bathroom, using the number Dan left within the box to call him, asking for help. Dan does in fact help him turn back to normal and, the following day, provides some much needed exposition on what exactly is going on here. Basically, that square glass Lomax was given is called a raiment, which allows for a magic suit from ancient times to be summoned, giving the user powers. The raiment existed for millennia as a means to protect Silver Dallin from monsters, with it choosing Lomax to be its next wielder. I'm definitely glossing over some details here, but basically Lomax is now a chosen one of sorts, really giving him a new purpose in life. Though whether this newfound purpose helps or hinders his personal growth remains to be seen. And yeah, that was kind of my basic plot synopsis of the comic. There's definitely some twists and turns in the form of plot events and character motivations, but I'll leave that for you to uncover. The only other thing I want to mention is that my favorite character gets introduced in chapter 4, both in design and personality. So yeah, look forward to that cause he's a lot of fun in my opinion. So, after all these years of trying to find this webcomic again, what did I think? Well, as the video's title implies, I thought it was great. I wouldn't say it's among my favorites, but I certainly enjoyed reading this one. I thought the story was decent, and the art, oh my goodness, the art is just so cool, so aesthetically pleasing. Now, having said all that, the comic had a pretty abrupt end. In one of the comic updates, Falke talked about how over time the comic became less rewarding for them to continue, only doing it out of a sense of obligation. Ultimately choosing to prioritize their health, Falke decided to end the comic much earlier than intended, providing a few more updates to close off the comic for good. Of course, these updates didn't resolve the current plot at hand, but for what it's worth, I did feel a sense of closure from the comic upon reading them. While it's sad to see the comic not live out its original vision, I certainly applaud Falke for choosing their health and well-being above all else. It's not easy maintaining a webcomic, especially one made for free, so I think it's a good exercise to remind ourselves that we, as the audience, aren't really owed anything. While it might be a bummer that the comic ended so suddenly, I for one am happy that it existed and happy I got to rediscover it after so long. So yeah, those were my thoughts on Parallax, a comic I personally enjoyed with amazing art and an interesting cast of characters. It's too bad Falke has since disappeared from the face of the internet, but I can certainly respect it. Wherever they are, I hope they're doing well. Also, just a side tangent, but while researching for this vid, I made the discovery that Falke went under the alias Beto Beto Love for adult-related content, and they were the ones that created none other than Baron's Black Book. To say that I was shook upon realizing this is quite the understatement. But okay, side tangent over. I hope I was able to shine a light on this mostly forgotten webcomic because I do think it deserves more love. Again, link to Parallax will be in the description below. And that will be it for today. Thanks for watching.